The world knows him as the unpredictable icon of comedy, a man who showed up uninvited to college house parties, crashed random bachelor parties, and stole French fries from strangers' plates while whispering, "No one will ever believe you." For decades, Bill Murray's eccentric, real-life antics were celebrated as a charming form of performance art, the ultimate proof of a Hollywood superstar living entirely in the present moment. But today, Bill Murray is trending worldwide, and it isn't for a surprise appearance or a new movie role. The internet is flooded with his name because the public is suddenly looking backward, re-examining the fine line between a lovable eccentric and something much more complicated. A series of long-buried stories, sudden production shutdowns, and legal settlements have forced the world to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. What happens when the public realizes that the behavior they laughed at for years was hiding a much darker, psychological reality? The answer is shifting how we look at a comedy legend forever, but the most unsettling revelation is where this pattern actually began. For nearly 40 years, Bill Murray occupied a unique, almost untouchable space in global pop culture. He famously operated without a traditional Hollywood agent or manager, instructing studio executives and top directors to leave pitches on a secret, automated 1-800 voicemail box that he rarely checked. He wandered through major cities like a ghost, appearing randomly in ordinary lives to wash dishes at a student apartment or photobomb an engagement session. This carefully cultivated detachment built the myth of the Bill Murray story, the idea that he was a modern folk hero who brought joy by disrupting the mundane rules of society. From a psychological perspective, this chaotic persona served as a brilliant defense mechanism. By stepping outside the normal structures of the entertainment industry, Murray managed to shield himself from standard professional accountability. Hollywood executives willingly tolerated his extreme mood swings, creative demands, and unpredictable behavior because his presence on a movie poster generated hundreds of millions of dollars. The public and the press consistently mistook his emotional distance and defiance of basic social boundaries for harmless, comedic genius. Beneath this celebrated veil of whimsy, however, lay a highly volatile personality. Those close to him observed a man who struggled deeply with control, power dynamics, and sudden outbursts of interpersonal conflict. The very traits that made him a beloved rebel on the silver screen were quietly creating an environment of intense stress and anxiety for the people working closest to him behind closed doors. For decades, the sheer weight of his celebrity status kept these fractures hidden from the audience. People simply chose to see the magic of the trickster, ignoring the underlying friction. Yet, the barrier between the myth and reality could not hold forever. A major clash on a massive film set at the turn of the millennium was about to prove that working with Hollywood's favorite ghost could easily turn into a complete professional nightmare. What actually occurred when a major female co-star refused to back down from his aggressive behavior on set, and how did the studio keep the truth hidden for over 20 years? In the year 2000, the blockbuster action film Charlie's Angels hit theaters and became a massive commercial success. While the movie projected an image of high-energy fun and female empowerment, the reality on the physical set was defined by severe psychological tension. The core of this friction involved a direct, explosive confrontation between Bill Murray and co-star Lucy Liu. During a routine rehearsal for a script rewrite that occurred while Murray was away from the set, he reportedly became deeply offended by the changes. According to witnesses, Murray stopped the scene entirely, turned to his prominent co-stars, and began loudly criticizing their talent. He specifically singled out Liu, allegedly saying that she had no business being on the set because she lacked basic acting ability. For Liu, a rising star navigating an industry that rarely protected minority actresses, this public humiliation crossed an unacceptable line. Instead of backing down in the face of a legendary Hollywood icon, Liu stood her ground and fiercely confronted him. The argument quickly escalated to a toxic level, forcing crew members to step in physically to separate the two actors and halt production for the day. This dramatic turning point exposed the complicated psychological dynamics that Murray brought to his professional workplaces. He did not view himself as a mere collaborator, he operated as the ultimate arbiter of creative quality, believing his status gave him the right to demean others. While the studio's publicity department worked tirelessly to downplay the incident as a typical creative disagreement between passionate artists, the emotional impact on the cast and crew was profound. It marked the first major crack in the public armor of his harmless persona. It revealed a deeply rooted pattern of workplace intimidation that Hollywood was desperate to keep quiet to protect its bottom line. The industry successfully swept the Charlie's Angels fallout under the rug, but 22 years later, history repeated itself on a different set, and this time, the studio could not hide the damage. In April of 2022, the entertainment industry was stunned when Searchlight Pictures took the incredibly rare step of suspending production on a major, highly anticipated film titled Being Mortal. The project, directed by and starring Aziz Ansari, was well underway when a sudden order forced the cast and crew to pack up and go home indefinitely. Within days, industry insiders revealed that the entire multi-million-dollar production had been derailed by a single individual, Bill Murray. The suspension followed a formal, official complaint filed by a much younger female production staff member regarding Murray's inappropriate physical behavior on set. When the news leaked, Murray attempted to defend his actions during a high-profile interview, characterizing the incident as a simple difference of opinion. He claimed that he had attempted to do something he personally considered funny and light-hearted, but that it had been completely misinterpreted by the staff member due to changing cultural times. The psychological reality behind the scenes, however, was far more serious than a misunderstood joke. A rigorous formal investigation by external legal counsel revealed a profound boundary violation that left the young staff member feeling deeply uncomfortable and distressed. Rather than risk a public trial or further corporate damage, Murray entered into a private legal agreement, paying a massive financial settlement of over $100,000 to the staff member in exchange for confidentiality. The total shutdown of Being Mortal sent a shockwave through the industry. It served as a definitive signal that the structural rules of Hollywood had permanently shifted. The culture was no longer willing to write off aggressive, non-consensual behavior as Bill just being quirky. For the first time in his long career, his actions faced immediate, severe institutional consequences. As the Being Mortal scandal shattered his modern reputation, it created a domino effect, inspiring legendary figures from his past to break their silence about his behavior in the 1990s. With the shocking shutdown of Being Mortal dominating global headlines, the public conversation surrounding Bill Murray underwent a dramatic transformation. The event acted as a psychological catalyst for individuals who had spent years harboring silent resentment. Just months after the production collapsed, Academy Award-winning actress Geena Davis released a deeply personal memoir that detailed her own distressing experiences working with Murray during the production of the 1990 film Quick Change. Davis described a deeply manipulative power dynamic that began in a private hotel room during her initial audition. Murray brought out a heavy mechanical massage device known as the Thumper and insisted on using it on her. Despite her repeated, polite refusals and visible discomfort, Murray refused to take no for an answer, ignoring her boundaries until she reluctantly submitted out of fear of losing the job. Later, while filming on a busy New York City street, Murray publicly screamed at Davis in front of hundreds of cast, crew, and onlookers because she was late leaving her trailer. Davis explained the intense psychological trap that many actors faced during that era, the overwhelming fear of speaking out against a beloved industry titan. If a performer complained about mistreatment, the industry would inevitably label them as difficult, effectively destroying their career while protecting the star. Following Davis's public revelation, actor Seth Green came forward with his own traumatic memory. He recalled being a 9-year-old child actor backstage at Saturday Night Live when Murray became enraged over a seating arrangement. Murray picked the young child up by his ankles and physically dropped him into a trash can. The collective narrative was shifting rapidly, transforming from isolated complaints into undeniable proof of a lifetime pattern of behavior. While these accounts from co-stars shocked the public, the most tragic manifestation of Murray's volatile psychology lay in the destruction of his most important creative friendship. To truly comprehend the depth of Bill Murray's psychological isolation, one must look past the casual sets of Hollywood and examine his relationship with Harold Ramis. Ramis was not just a colleague, he was Murray's closest creative brother, the co-writer and director of Groundhog Day, and his legendary co-star in Ghostbusters. Together, they redefined modern American comedy. However, this historic partnership suffered a devastating, catastrophic collapse during the filming of Groundhog Day in 1993. At the time of production, Murray was enduring a painful, highly chaotic domestic divorce. His emotional state on the set became incredibly erratic, characterized by dark depressions and sudden bursts of rage. Psychologically, Murray began pulling away from comedy entirely, becoming hyper-focused on turning the film into a heavy, bleak philosophical drama. This directly clashed with Ramos's vision of a balanced, accessible human comedy. The creative friction quickly transformed into deep personal hostility. Murray became so uncommunicative and hostile that he stopped answering Ramos's phone calls completely. To keep production moving, the studio had to hire a personal assistant whose sole qualification was fluency in American Sign Language, just so they could convey basic directorial notes to Murray without forcing him to speak to Ramos. When the movie wrapped, Murray cut Ramos out of his life entirely, severing all communication. For over 20 consecutive years, two of the greatest minds in comedy history refused to exchange a single word. This total emotional shutdown highlights Murray's primary psychological coping mechanism. When confronted with deep personal pain or professional resistance, he chose to completely destroy his most valued relationships rather than engage in vulnerable communication or compromise. This bitter, icy silence persisted for more than 2 decades, until a sudden, tragic medical emergency forced a final encounter just days before it was too late. By the year 2014, Harold Ramis was entering the final, agonizing stages of a severe, debilitating autoimmune disease that left him unable to speak or move independently. The man who had helped shape Bill Murray's career was rapidly slipping away. It was during this tragic window that Murray experienced a profound internal shift, recognizing that his time to resolve the decades-long feud was running out. In the pre-dawn hours of a cold morning, accompanied by a local police escort to navigate the suburban streets quietly, Murray knocked unexpectedly on Ramos's front door. He arrived completely unannounced, carrying a simple box of donuts. He walked into the home of his estranged friend and sat by his bedside for several hours. Because Ramos's illness had advanced to the point where he could no longer speak, Murray did the vast majority of the talking. The two men, who had spent a generation ignoring each other's existence, shared a quiet, fragile peace in those early morning hours. Just days later, Ramos passed away. Psychologically, this quiet midnight visit perfectly encapsulates the intense, tragic duality of Bill Murray. He clearly possessed a deep capacity for emotional intelligence, tenderness, and profound regret. Yet, his immense pride and his lifelong inability to handle interpersonal conflict had kept him estranged from a brother figure for a quarter of a century. While this final visit offered a necessary sense of closure, it could not erase or undo the decades of unnecessary pain caused by his emotional withdrawal. It showed a man trapped inside the fortress of his own complex personality, deeply capable of love, but ultimately crippled by his own internal walls. This quiet act of late-stage reconciliation showed the softer side of a flawed genius, but it could not stop the modern wave of global scrutiny that was building toward a massive tipping point. Today, the global internet community is no longer laughing at the viral stories of Bill Murray stealing French fries or crashing bachelor parties. A profound, permanent shift in public perception is currently trending worldwide. In a modern culture that actively prioritizes workplace safety, mental health awareness, and clear emotional boundaries, Murray's historical behavior is being re-evaluated through an entirely new lens. The psychological charm of the unpredictable, carefree trickster has largely faded, replaced by the sober realization that his actions often left real emotional damage and professional trauma in their wake. Murray himself has occasionally expressed a bittersweet, melancholic awareness of his own internal struggles. In rare, introspective interviews, he has admitted that his greatest challenge in life has always been learning how to be fully present in the world without being destructive to the people who care about him or work alongside him. He remains an undeniable cinematic titan, an actor whose unforgettable, melancholic performances in masterpieces like Lost in Translation and Rushmore perfectly captured the profound loneliness and isolation of the human condition. It is a loneliness he perhaps understood all too well because he built it himself. As the global conversation continues to evolve, the world is learning the difficult art of separating the brilliant artist from the deeply flawed human being. We are forced to recognize that a person can be both a creative genius who defined a generation of cinema and a cautionary tale about the psychological dangers of unchecked privilege and isolation. As the digital world continues to debate his legacy, one final, lingering question remains for every fan who ever loved his movies: can we still appreciate the art of a man who spent his entire life refusing to play by the rules, even when those rules were meant to protect others?